All right, well, another important topic. Developing profitable, timely, and high-quality products, and it's more important today than it ever has been before. Visibility into product performance has never been higher, while competitive pressures continue to squeeze margins and time to market. And to compete, manufacturers must deliver better, faster, and cheaper. And it's relatively easy to accomplish one of those things, and considerably harder to accomplish two, and it's outright difficult to achieve all three at the same time. To do so requires a strategic, collaborative, and digitalized effort. Manufacturers devote considerable efforts to new product introductions, or NPI, yet even with lots of investment, both in terms of time and money, more than half of all new products fail to meet all NPI success criteria. Better results can be achieved by removing the obstacles that prevent collaborative NPI. Of course, doing so is easier said than done. So to tell us more about how this can be achieved, we're very pleased now to welcome Dan Jacob of LNS Research to the show. Dan, welcome back to Quality Digest Live.
Thanks, Mike and Dirk. Thanks for having me back.
Of course, sure. Of course.
Hey, well Dan, you and your team at LNS Research, you guys have done a lot of digging into this whole topic, and actually you've released an ebook. We actually have a link to it below the page, the player page there. The ebook was called Sustainable Growth via Profitable, High-Quality NPI, and it kind of summarizes your findings in this research. So what could you share with us today that are some of the biggest takeaways that readers will get?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think one of the things that is really important to understand before we drill into the takeaways is really what the focus was for the research itself. And it was an effort that took us a long time to really pull together the information here. If you think about it, NPI is a new product introduction is a process that has lots of stakeholders. Quality doesn't really own that process. It's a supporting function. It's an area that a lot of quality leaders, when you talk about culture, you're thinking about the holy grail of quality and becoming more proactive. There's a lot of value for quality to be engaged early in that process and engaged early in NPI throughout the product introduction. But the approach we took for the research was to really truly take a cross-functional approach to this. So understanding what the objectives were for product development and operations and procurement and quality, et cetera. So when you looked at that, the things that were really valuable are that, and just looking at how do you define NPI success, and it might be surprising to some of the quality leaders out there that across many of those functions, quality is seen as one of the top is a top objective for NPI. So you look at things like time to market, you look at cost, you look at product performance. Quality is in either the very top, or one of the top three objectives across all the different functions. But quality provides a lot of value to NPI. So if you look at things like where you gather your lessons learned from, actually a portion of the market still is trying to get their arms around that so it can drive continuous improvement. But those who do primarily leverage quality data. So it's an area that quality does extraordinarily well. So lots of value in understanding where we all stand as we walk through this NPI process and benchmark what the practices are and how how the market has adopted NPI, where it's strong and where there's opportunities for improvement. And that's what the research really helps identify. Again, kind of going back to this idea of like you said, having strategic alignment between the different functions, taking a collaborative approach, and then finally, and very importantly, also looking at this from a digitalized perspective. So both understanding what are some of the gaps and issues that we see, the top challenges. If you, as an example, requirements management is, and one of the top challenges in requirements management is fragmented data sources and Excel spreadsheets being used there and not having the change management throughout that process. So lots of opportunity for improvement. In NPI, again, from a quality leader perspective, what's interesting is that there's a lot of value perceived in quality's engagement. Quality delivers a lot of value. There's some challenges that quality needs to overcome. but that overall message of a collaborative, strategically aligned and digitalized process is really pretty critical to advancing quality's engagement in NPI.
And Dan, you know, the book, the ebook that we mentioned has an entire section on the digital innovation cycle. That focuses on how manufacturers can gather data and leverage insights from that data, and helps them adapt, decide, and act within an NPI environment. And you know, you and I were chatting offline about this. It's a complex topic, but maybe you can give us a couple of the key ideas and insights in that cycle.
For sure. Yeah, and this will be a really quick overview. You know, one thing I want to point out is that this digital innovation cycle is particularly important today, and some of the research that we're talking about here is particularly important today because there's a lot of fundamental changes in the marketplace. You know, some of those are that, you know, regulators and your customers, if you're B2B or if you're B2C, if you look at online marketplaces, it's a driving force, is increased visibility of quality data to your customer community. And it's driving both top line. We always associate quality with, you know, cost of poor quality and really trying to improve the bottom line performance, but also it's directly connecting quality more and more frequently to the top line performance. So it's a key driver to really understand these topics today. From a digital innovation cycle perspective, you know, I think your Honeybot story is a great one. You have a scenario where, you know, where we've access to lots of new data, right? You've got IoT and the connection of data on the shop floor, right? And that digital data provides with lots of new insights and opportunities to innovate. But is that sufficient for us really to drive innovation, right? And the answer is no. You do have access to that data, and it can be a driving force for innovation. It's very important for you to access to that, to have better insight and more timely, higher velocity insights. But that alone isn't enough to drive innovation. So again, for those who don't have, or haven't been along their, haven't started their digitalization journey yet, you know, I'd strongly encourage you to build that strategy, both to consolidate your traditional data and begin your digitalization journey. But as a part of innovation, there's quite a bit of, there's a strong aspect of culture of change, right? Understanding what your risk tolerance is, having the right competencies and experience, and really kind of marrying that together to drive innovation. It's you know, the data is a critical part, but there's a lot of other pieces there. So when you drill into that research, you know, one piece on this is how that traditional data and the new data that you're getting both from internal systems and external systems, how that can help you gain insights into performance, more timely insights, how that can help you remove ambiguity. You know, when you talk about data, in a lot of cases, we talk about your data-driven decision-making, et cetera, and that's really valuable. But, you know, one important part to recognize in here is the idea of ambiguity. You know, in a lot of cases, if you look at NPI as a process, in the beginning of that, when you're trying to understand what the market requirements are, that's called the fuzzy front end of NPI, right? So you're not really sure, am I building the right product to suit the market? As I go through it, I learn more about, and again, if we can tap into some of that new data, we're looking at social media or online marketplaces, comparing our products against competitors, then maybe, you know, we can understand, okay, well, this is where they're comparatively strong. We can adjust in a much more timely fashion to that, remove some of that ambiguity about the market, and then drive forward. So the insights and ambiguity is an important part. And then adapting to that adaptation piece is really critical. And that brings in the cultural changes and the people and competencies. Then deciding, really, ultimately, this is a decision cycle. So you're deciding based on that input and then acting upon it. And that's where you know, again, there's a lot of traditional tools we've in place to improve actions and, you know, procedures and work instructions, et cetera. But there's also a lot of new things like augmented reality, virtual reality, you know, the connected worker, et cetera, to help both you know, track that action, but also, you know, in some cases it's about oversight. In other cases, it's really about you're driving, you know, providing real-time feedback and more directly empowering the worker to accomplish more in the time available.
And Dan, we have about a minute left. I want to ask this because really what you're talking about is you're describing kind of the industry 4.0 world that we're all in now with regard to data and analytics. And quality 4.0 really is a subset of that, and NPI is a subset of that. So how does that all kind of fit into the kind of that scheme of underneath Industry 4.0?
Well, the way, and forgive me, I'm moving around. My stuff, all my equipment's falling apart. The way that when we published and defined Quality 4.0 last year, right? And you have that framework with 11 axes to really help understand and build a strategy around Quality 4.0. That framework really applies across the life cycle, across the value chain, across functions. And our intention has been to really drill into specific areas like NPI, which are strategically important. And so, this directly connects with that. You're building upon that Quality 4.0 research and taking a slice into the NPI portion and helping you understand, here's where the market stands, here's how you can differentiate. It's very interesting. You brought up some of the statistics there. 56%, the median NPI success rate is 56%, right? Without taking that strategically aligned, collaborative and digitalized approach, that's your market median. But when you take the proper approach and deploy the correct best practices, you have a substantially higher rate of success on NPI. So you go from being effectively a coin flip after 24 months of work on a given project, which is again a median value. But you go from a coin flip for success to something that's appreciably higher, 20+% higher NPI success. So I think it's really, this is drilling into the NPI portion and providing you with the best practices to differentiate yourself in a new market with much higher visibility to quality.
Well, Dan Jacob of LNS, you guys do a great job at LNS Research. Always really give us a lot of really good information. I think that the users appreciate it as well. The new ebook, of course, Sustainable Growth via Profitable High Quality NPI. It's out now, and folks can download it. I think, Dirk, you said there's a link.
There's a link, underneath the player page down there at the very bottom. If you're on our big player page, there's a link at the bottom there that links out to the ebook.
And in Dan's latest article as well.
Yes, in Dan's latest article.
So, Dan, thanks again for joining us this morning. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
Thanks, Dan.
Talk to you, Dan.
Take care.